They're coming for us. Get them. Get them. They're coming in hot.
I got one.
Don't get cocky, kid.
But it's a Pod Bros podcast.
What do you mean it's a podcast? You haven't been shooting? They're all over the place.
Well, no, but they've got all sorts of good shows like Pencil and Ink Reviews and The Guy Huddle and Players vs. Podcasts. I mean, was I supposed to?
Yes. What? How many podcasts do they have?
There's tons. You got other ones like The Accidental Wrestling Fan and Take Aim Outdoors.
That kind of sounds like we should make podcasts, not war.
Aww. What's up, everybody? I'm Richard.
And I'm Shawn.
And we're speaking the language of romance. Shawn, I gotten faith in humanity today.
Why is that?
There's faith in the human race because today we've learned, well, not today, but we've learned that NASA is working on a spacecraft to launch human beings to Mars.
To Mars, the red planet.
We're going to Mars.
There's a meme out there. It's a bald eagle like with an American flag behind it, and it's very much like America kind of thing. And it's always like I've only seen one that I really remember than this new one. And the first one I saw said something to the effect of like some country like they just discovered oil. It's like, oh, I see such and such has oil. Looks like somebody could use a little freedom.
Ah.
So the newest one that came out, it says, Martians, prepare yourself. You're about to get freedom.
Ah. Merca.
But it's crazy that, I mean, neither one of us really got to live through the moon landing. And I don't even think my parents were really old enough to understand what the moon landing was about. So I think it's going to be really crazy. And I don't think the planned mission is till like the 2030.
Yeah, like 2035. This is according to Bloomberg. The author is Justin Bachman.
So not till 2035 will we actually get to Mars. But I mean, can you imagine how crazy that's going to be? Is getting from Earth all the way to the moon and ideally all the way back, or to Mars, I'm sorry, and all the way back.
Exactly. I mean, but I don't we need this? Like, don't we? Not just as Americans, but just as people, just as human beings, don't we need something to shoot for? I mean, I wasn't around. Obviously, I wasn't around for the moon landing. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon in 1969. And I don't get it.
Have you lost your faith in humanity yet?
But yeah, they walked on the moon, and I mean, it was a seminal event, not just for Americans. I mean, yes, we had the space race going on with Russia. And, it was in the height of the Cold War, and it was our way of being like, fuck you, Russia. Look what we can do. You send people into space. We send people to the moon.
All the way to the moon. That's cute. You break the atmosphere and all, but we go beyond that.
Yeah, we're running on the fucking moon, motherfucker. Don't we, as people, need something to inspire us? I mean, I think that this is good, not just on the level of, look at, the technological difficulty it is to send a human being to another planet, but it's inspiring. I think it, it gives us as the human race something to shoot for. That's what we do. I'm not just talking about country. I'm talking about like us as a species.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things that, I mean, humans for, many, many years have been like traveling. And it really seems like that's what's the push to kind of grow, technologically and everything. Because, there was points where, we had ships and we could travel really well, but it's like, yeah, we don't let the land get out of our sight. We stay close to land and just travel the coasts. And at some point, somebody's like, well, what if we just go straight away from the coast? What's out there? You discover America. And like that had to have been a 6-month trip or something ridiculous.
Right.
You even think even more recent, 120 years ago, maybe there was people in the United States that were traveling from one part of the country all the way to the other in horse and buggy that took, months to get from point A to point B. And this is just the next step in that evolution of human travel, human exploration.
Right? We come out, yeah. We start out, we come out of the cave and we figure out what fire is, and then we build things and we sail oceans and find new land and walk over that land and find new land and find more water, and it's inspiring. I mean, I think that it proves that we're the human race, and that there are certain things that we share, and one of those is the desire to expand.
It's going to be really interesting. This is just the infancy of it, but this is I wonder if this is like the equivalent of creating like a paddle boat, like to get from one point of a lake to another. Because, getting from Earth to Mars is a huge task and not very cheap. I think so far they said in the all the creation of this, they spent like $9 billion. I don't know how much the test launch would have cost just in pieces on that. But it's just crazy to think about. Like, at some point, people are going to probably look back. Hopefully, ideally, this would be what we'd want to happen, is that people are going to look back and be like, you mean like traveling to Mars and other planets was a big task? Like, it didn't happen until 2375 was the first time that, humans could travel back and forth from Mars just like it was a vacation.
Yeah. Yeah. And and you bring up another point, that a lot of technological advances that we made, especially during the 60s, was spun off of the Apollo program. Things that NASA developed in their quest to put a man on the moon. They developed all sorts of different technology that they eventually, sold off or gave away or whatever. And that's technology that, some of us still use today. I mean, like nonstick polymer, back then it was Teflon.
Yeah.
But, developed by NASA during the Apollo program. And I mean, how can we not forget Tang?
It's, yeah, you think about just all the stuff that has to go into this, and like you said, all these things that come out of it. I think the craziest thing they talk about is like most people have more powerful cell phones than all the technology that was in like that first Apollo mission.
Right. You're at the average smartphone just in terms of raw computing power is about 100 times greater than the computing power we use to put a man on the moon.
And I have a hard time believing that, because I stuck my phone in my car today and I said, Siri, take me to the moon.
Yeah.
Nothing. I think she started playing Pink Floyd, though. So.
Like, no, not the dark. Oh, God.
That's a good
Siri,
song.
you bitch.
It's going to be really interesting to see the people that sign up for that first mission, because it's very much like, you look at any of those big things, like going back to like the first person that decided to cross the ocean. You got to have some like no fear of death kind of thing, because you're in a boat in the middle of the ocean. If your boat breaks down, you're fucked. And that's kind of the same scenario these guys are going to be, because I don't know if they're going to.
Right? They're hurtling through space at thousands of miles an hour. If something breaks, then what?
Yeah. Are they? I don't know if they'll have another ship like kind of suited up, ready to go, but would it even be able to catch up, or just all these things that? And there's going to be, people who say, I want to sign up for this mission. I want to be the first known human to walk on Mars.
Who wouldn't want that?
I would like.
You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't.
No.
You wouldn't get on a spaceship and be like, I'm going to fucking Mars. If I knew what I was doing. I'm saying, like, if I, signed up for this mission and was fully trained, and they were like, okay, we're going to train you and you're going to get on this giant rocket and we're going to send you to Mars. And in theory, you should be able to get back. Like, I'd totally be down for that. I mean, why not?
It's just the fear of, like, in theory, you should be able to make it there and back. I think a lot of it comes from, like, I have a little bit of a claustrophobia when it comes to stuff like that. Like, if I'm on an airplane.
Yeah, those capsules are small.
Yeah. And then, I didn't even think about the actual claustrophobia. But I was thinking more of, like, the not being able to get away kind of thing. Like, like, I can't be like, I want to go outside, or, I don't want to be here right now. It's like, once that rocket takes off, you're there.
You're stuck.
Yeah.
Where are you going? Nowhere.
But, like, airplanes, like, traveling over, like, land, I'm fine, because it's like, if something happens or anything, like, they can land. At worst, they can land in a field, or we've seen in the past, brave pilots who land, in rivers to save from, like, these big catastrophes. But, like, when I'm traveling over the ocean, it's like, if it breaks down,
you're landing in water.
If it breaks down, yeah, you're landing in water, which, I can't swim that far.
Plus,
dude, salsa shark. That is probably my one, like, I feel like that's how I'm going to go, is I'm going to be in a plane crash. It's going to land in the ocean. I'll survive this crash. I'll be like, oh, thank God. I
made it.
And just a fin swims right by.
Oh, take the girl. I'll tell you what I'm wondering. I'm wondering if, say we figure this out, and we, get people in a capsule and we go to the moon or go to Mars and we fly all that way and we get all the way back, and then there's like 3 guys that are like, you guys faked that.
Oh yeah, that's gonna happen. It's like, oh yeah, if you can tell by this angle, like, you can completely tell that's fake. That's not real. And, like, I mean, we've talked about this before. We both love conspiracy theories. But if you're like those guys that have actually been on the moon and risked your life, because that's what they're doing. They're risking their life. This isn't as simple as driving to Walmart to pick something up. This is leaving Earth, going through space and landing on a rock that's floating above us. And if you went through all that, get on the moon, you survived this whole thing, and some weird dude's in the back going, that wasn't really real. You're faking it. Like, wouldn't you just punch him in the face? I believe,
didn't Buzz Aldrin punch somebody in the face over that, right?
I think he's punched a few people, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, do you know what I've been through?
Motherfucker, I was on the moon. Almost died. Radiation poisoning. Suffocation, fear of suffocation, fear of radiation poisoning, all sorts of shit. And here you come.
You know what? Neil Armstrong gets to be the first one. You know what that fucker does right when we get out of space? Puts his arm around me and says, you know what, Buzz? It's a long ride to the moon.
Oh, shit. I'm trying to think. There was, so you got your, I'll tell. Speaking of conspiracy theories, this is what I was going to say. Speaking of conspiracy theories, if we're going to Mars, I want to hit all this shit that people are saying look like pyramids and, the face on Mars and all this other stuff. Like, if we're going to Mars, like, that's where I want to go. Like, that's where I want us to go.
It's kind
of I don't want to just land somewhere and collect a bunch of rocks and then come back. Like, I want to go and be like, holy shit, there's a pyramid here. Or
well, that really is a face.
Yeah, or not. Why not settle that whole thing? It's like with the moon. They say the one definitive proof, the definitive proof that we've been on the moon is apparently there's a mirror on the moon.
A mirror.
Yes, when Neil and Buzz or during the Apollo program, there was a mirror that was placed on the moon. So that way, if you have the exact coordinates, you can actually fire a laser at the moon. The laser will then bounce off of the mirror and reflect back to your location.
Huh.
So you have like a readout. This is so stupid. I actually saw this. I mean, this isn't where I got it from, but they had it kind of featured on an episode of The Big Bang Theory.
Okay.
where they fired this, they fired a laser at the moon and then looked at a computer readout of I don't remember what they had, but they saw a spike in, on this board that they had, and that showed that the signal that they sent, the laser that they had bounced off of the moon and then come back.
Well, I've recently heard too that telescopes and things like that are gotten so powerful now that you can see some of the trash they've left up there. And that's supposed to have like kind of eliminated any kind of like conspiracy theories, because like you can look at the moon through your own telescope and see those things.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I haven't done it or anything. I believe there's sites you can go to where people like do that and they kind of feed it through. But supposedly you can actually look at that stuff and see it through your own telescope.
Huh. I don't know. I'm all for it. I am all for us going to Mars. I think we should have done it years ago. I think it's it's good for science, it's good for technology, but beyond that, it's just I think it's inspiring for humanity. I think it's I mean, they talk about the moon landing, and it's something that actually brought people together. Like everybody was, everybody went to their television to watch Neil Armstrong take his first steps on the moon.
Well, yeah, didn't the news anchor like start crying?
Well, yeah, I mean, and also I mean, on an American from an American standpoint, I think it shows our determination. Like, you know, Kennedy said during this, I think it was the State of the Union, but Kennedy said we will land a man on the moon within this decade, and it got done. We put our money where our mouth was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big problems, I think with NASA is that they they don't get a lot of funding anymore. It seems like people have people stopped caring. And I'm saying why? Like why it's not a luxury. Like inspiration shouldn't be a luxury for us. It should be something that we strive for and celebrate when it happens.
Well, it's going to be some point. I think we're going to have to look outside our solar system at some point. I mean, if the human race wants to continue on, that's just going to have to be necessary. I think we have the capabilities to avoid any kind of, like asteroid impact to Earth and things like that. But, at some point, Earth isn't going to be able to sustain us either by population or just the system's dying. You always have to worry at some point the sun may be giving up. There's all these things that are going to have to, if humanity wants to survive, we're going to have to reach outside of our solar system. And the moon really was probably the first big step towards that. And this is just the next progression for that.
Why you got to get all doom and gloom? Like, I'm trying to, like, inspire mankind, and here you are like, well, we better do it. Otherwise, we're all just going to be crushed under the weight of our own filth.
Well, before that happens, they're going to somehow put, like, Disney worlds and, nice resorts and all that on Mars. So before then, you're going to get to travel to Mars, and we're going to have 2 planets. Like, you're going to have your summer home on the Mars and your winter home here on Earth.
I would think that the winter home would be on Mars. It's kind of cold.
Yeah. Is it cold on Mars?
Well,
yeah, it's colder, isn't it?
Yeah, they have a super thin atmosphere.
I wonder, and that's so we've had that rover on Mars for like 4 or 5 years now. It's been a bit.
Something like that.
So I'm kind of curious so when we landed that, or not we, I mean NASA did. But once that was landed, and they've been kind of searching like all the things that they probably haven't told us that they found. Because something tells me if that rover was driving around, it's like, yeah, there's absolutely nothing here for us to investigate. That they would just not even kind of build this kind of thing right now.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm kind of curious, like, what it's found that... Because it seems like I've heard this mentioned, but there's never really been any kind of, like, updates to be like, oh, hey, we're 3 years out from firing this rocket. We're 2 years out from firing this rocket. It just, like, popped on my newsfeed one day. It's like, hey, we're shooting a rocket off tomorrow.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mine too. I mean, I don't know if it's just because I haven't really been following it, but you would think that something like that would be a bit more celebrated. Like, hey, we're working on sending a motherfucker to Mars. To Mars.
I really want. I think so. We got like how long? 25 years, 20 years till it gets sent up there. You and I need to try and get infiltrated somehow into NASA, so that a way we can be on there. We could do the first podcast ever from Mars.
On Mars.
On Mars.
But like we're speaking the language of bromance on fucking Mars.
Bromance in space.
Yeah.
Like, so what'd you do today? It's like, I like walked around and saw some rocks. What'd you do? Saw a fucking pyramid.
Yeah. On Mars.
Did you go in it? No, Dr. Martian said I couldn't go until Tuesday. It's, I really like, I hope it's not like we land on Mars and it is just like, yeah, there's stuff here that, it's, I mean, we're pretty sure that we could inhabit it, right? Like, is that pretty well?
Well, actually, the theory I've heard is that in order for us to, I mean, you have like the whole bubble thing where we like, I mean, you see it in like sci-fi stuff where like you see these like big glass domes and shit like that. I don't think it would be like that. In theory, what we would do is we would essentially have to create an atmosphere, almost like terraforming, basically.
Yeah.
We would have to create a thicker atmosphere over Mars in order to, sustain some sort of life. And one of the ways they thought about doing it was, and this sounds like a very simple idea, but at the same time, it kind of makes you wonder, is kind of like what we do here on Earth and create a greenhouse effect. We would create a greenhouse effect on Mars. So one of the things they thought we should do is send like something equivalent of like a diesel truck, like a diesel engine, something that just spews tons and tons of carbon monoxide into the air.
Okay.
And that would essentially thicken the atmosphere in order to, protect us more from the sun's, radiation.
Have you heard like any like, so if they talk about those theories, like how long it would take for something like that to take hold?
No, I don't. There was something I saw on the Discovery Channel about it, like a few years ago, and like they actually had an image of like these giant like diesel trucks with like these like smokestack things on the sides of them, and just this black smoke just pouring out of it.
That's funny. It's like the one thing that we complain about so much on Earth, and that's like what's going to create our new home.
Exactly. That's why it kind of stuck with me, and I found it so funny. Like honestly, like I'm picturing like we get to Mars, and there's like like a giant truck with like a rebel flag on the back. Because like, Yee!
Welcome to America Part 2, bitches.
Rolling rocks on Mars.
All we got here is country music and beer. If you don't like it, go home.
You know who's not here? Obama.
Well, he's the one that kind of set these plans in motion. We don't like to talk about
that. He ain't even American. I saw it on the news. So yeah, we have a bunch of diesel trucks. Basically, people will go mudding on Mars.
Maybe that's the way you sell it. You just try to get a bunch of people who like to go mudding and love to drive big old trucks. Like, that's all you got to do all day is just drive a truck around Mars.
Right.
Four-wheeling, dune buggying.
The problem takes care of itself.
But yeah, it's I thought about like if I could get into that kind of ship, and I don't think I could. Like I think like it is a 6-month flight, right? That's the estimation.
That's the way I understand it. Which at 6 months, that means I think that they say that thing's gonna be traveling like 20,000 miles an hour.
I mean, what do you do for 6 months in one of those capsules? I mean,
I just sleep.
Yeah, read a lot.
I mean, it'd be like a transatlantic flight. You just sleep.
I wonder if they'll be able to like feed them like Netflix and stuff like that. So you just basically lounge around all day and watch shows and.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. You're like, oh, just sit here. Oh, okay.
I kind of wonder, like, it's such a tight area. Like, it's one of those things, like, I always think about these weird things. It's like they're going to have to poop and pee on there, which they'll probably have to do in front of each other.
I've heard pooping in space is weird. It's an odd venture.
There was a transcript from, I believe it was the Apollo mission, where they're talking to Houston. All of a sudden they're like, "Oh God, who did that? Catch it, catch it!" And then like, "Oh, somebody just pooped." Like it was floating around, and they were trying to catch it before it got on anybody.
Ew. I have like a poo phobia.
But I mean, you like, there's no privacy whatsoever. And I don't know about you, but there's some things that I could not go without for 6 months.
Yeah, that's true.
And like, it would be my luck that I'd be like,
Don't come in the command module. Don't come in the command module.
What's all this yogurt floating around?
Catch it, catch it.
It's a little salty.
Oh.
Yeah, it's space salt. Don't judge me. Don't challenge my theories. I'm a scientist, damn it.
Martian salt.
But like, it'd be my luck, like, you'd get on there and you'd be like, "Oh man, I gotta take care of some business," but you'd be on one of those flights with like the prudish people ever. And like, of course there'd be that one lady who like she'd file the first sexual harassment claim all the way on Mars.
Yeah. He touched me inappropriately. All right, you sit over there and you sit over there.
I am not to blame for this.
Don't make me turn this rocket around.
But you think you could sign up for that?
Yeah, why not? I mean, because at the end, like, you're coming back and you're like, I went to Mars.
What do they know? I know. I think you lose so much density in your bones for every like day you're in zero gravity.
Oh yeah, I've heard that too.
Do they know the the health issues that are going to come from them going all the way to Mars and coming all the way back? Because they'll be spending a full year pretty much in zero gravity.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Come back and you step off the thing and like you fall over because you have no use of your legs anymore.
Yeah, you just like collapse.
But I think the scarier thing too is just like, I think that's probably my big fear, is just like the fear of death that would come from that, because it's, that's a year out of your life that you're flying all the way to Mars. I don't know how long they're staying on Mars. I would assume if it takes that long, they're going to try and be on there as long as possible.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think that they'd probably be there for like, a week or 2 weeks or something like that.
But you're completely dependent on this, aluminum metal capsule to get you from point A to point B. And I just thought about this today, too. That's got to survive 2 landings, because you got to land on Mars, so there's going to be re-entry on that.
Right.
Then you got to land back on Earth, which there's re-entry on that.
Right. They said that was the point of this first flight. The main point was to test the craft's thermal protection system, the largest shield system in the history of spaceflight. According to NASA, the distance needed to help Orion achieve a speed that could top 20,000 miles per hour to test the thermal shield. As a deep space capsule designed to return to Earth, Orion's speed will generate re-entry temperatures of 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow. And I'm not very good with my Celsius conversion. That's pretty hot, right?
Yeah. Yeah, little bit. I think like lava, I think runs around 4,000 degrees.
Wow.
So hot enough to melt rock.
So we're going to have some kind of metal that can't be melted. That's crazy.
The Apollo missions had to manage re-entry heat up to 5,000 degrees. A Mars mission may well test 6,000 degrees.
Wow.
Geez, 6,000 degrees.
It's pretty warm. And it's just, I mean, there's people that this has been their lifelong like career, basically, is to try to figure out how to get from point A to point B and all these things. And there's going to be a bunch of yahoos just watching around TV being like, "Oh, that's kind of cool,"
Right, yeah. And yeah, see, that's what would bother me. That's one thing that I fear. I fear that like in this day and age of like, very quick hitting passing news stories and, like our, over obsession with celeb culture and, internet memes and stuff like that. Like I almost fear that it wouldn't be taken as seriously as it should. Mm-hmm. Like we walk on Mars and then it's like just a pop in somebody's news feed. Like that would honestly break my heart.
Yeah. I mean, you just went back to it on like landing on the moon. There wasn't as much stuff that you really got into, so there wasn't that many distractions. So the moon was the big thing, That was what was happening. Like everybody was tuned to it. So there's just so much stuff going on now that like that whole Mars thing. It's just like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, but I mean, there is, yes, there is a bunch of stuff, but I mean, is it really stuff that matters?
I that's you could go into a whole thing on stuff like that. It's like who's wearing what? Does that stuff matter? It's like absolutely not.
No.
This huge scientifical thing that we haven't seen in our lifetime.
And what is it? It's like it's one of those 30 stories that we scroll through while looking at pictures of a Kardashian's ass.
Yeah. And then there's gonna be guys like us, like, I wonder if they had sex on Mars yet to be the first ones to have sex. Which that would be kind of my thought, is like you get on Mars, and it's like I want to be the first one known to do all these things. So I'd be the first one to take a deuce on Mars, first one to pee on a rock,
right?
All this weird stuff.
Also, the gravity is way lighter. So
yeah, just like what was that Disney movie that came out where the dude went to Mars?
Oh, John Carter.
Yeah,
based on that book.
That would be that would be so amazing. Like you just start running and jump like from place to place, pick up rocks and hurl them.
Right.
You're essentially Superman.
Be like a superhero.
If there's the one chick you've been trying to impress all 6 months on this trip, you pick up a rock, be like, "Hey, Barbara, just curling this rock here, probably about 12,000 pounds. Nothing, light day, off day. So what are you doing later on tonight?"
Well, not only that, but like like if it was me, like I'd be running and jumping around, like singing the Superman theme. Like I'd be like jumping around.
Rich, have you checked your status stuff yet? It's like, refer to me as Superman. God damn it, Richard.
I don't know that name anymore. I'm Superman. I'm not wearing glasses. Why didn't no one ever figure that out?
I thought I read somewhere that in the comics he compressed his spine so he looked a lot shorter. So that was something else he did.
I never heard that, really.
So he slouched to make himself more secret.
Don't slouch, it's bad for your spine.
Oh, I'm sorry. Stretches back out. It's like, oh my God, you look like Superman. Laser beam.
Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, Superman's an odd one.
So that's me. I'm all excited about some space travel. I want to see some pyramids on Mars. That's the places I want us to go. I want us to go and like settle all these debates, for better or for worse. I mean, what's wrong with us, finding out or not finding out that, like, because let's say there is an actual pyramid there. Like, if we see it, then that's definitive proof that we're not alone in the universe.
How life-changing, earth-shattering would it be if like they did find that stuff? Like, let's say they go through Mars and like they're like, there's fucking cities here, and they start looking at other things like there's like highly sophisticated technology that's it's destroyed, but it looks pretty significant.
Well, I mean, just something as simple as like, say, like an obelisk. Because I mean, they say that there might be like an obelisk at like a certain location, like you see like the shadow of it or something like that. Like just something as simple as we land on another planet and find a a non-natural created an artificial object.
Yeah. So what you said? They think there's a what on the Mars?
An obelisk,
which
like
is?
Oh, you see them a lot in Egyptian architecture and in some places in ancient Roman architecture. It looks like the Washington Monument is an example.
Okay.
So some like a big giant rock that looks kind of like like a square, like a rectangle with a kind of that kind of comes to a point.
I gotcha. But yeah, I mean, if you could, so this is what I'm thinking in my head. So Mars existed, right? Because we're always trying to figure out like the missing link. Like we're like, well, we kind of came from apes, but we don't know where it came from. Like, what if that was the starting point? Mars knew it was dying, and it's like, okay, well, there's this planet in front of us that it's a little bit hotter, but we should be able to survive there. And they send these missions to Earth that eventually created, what we have today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how amazing would something like that be if they found that out? Or am
Yeah.
I just getting too excited about nothing?
Well, I mean, just the thought that if we found a man-made object on Mars or an object on Mars, that means either one of two things. Either A, there was another species that was here and is now gone due to whatever, because of whatever, X reason. So that's a possibility, which in that case, oh, holy shit. Or the second scenario is that there was another species that came and created that object and then left.
Mm-hmm.
Either one would provide definitive proof, irrefutable proof that we are not alone in the universe.
So do you think? Let's play this out. So they get to Mars. They'll have the moon landing type shot where they show them landing and show them walking around, but at some point that's going to go black. You're not going to see what they're doing. So you're on Mars walking around and you find one of those objects. You send the picture back to NASA. NASA sees it and says, "Yeah, let's bring this back and investigate it." They bring it back, investigate it. It's not natural. It's been created. Do they release that to the public?
Do they? I don't know. I would think that in this day and age, I would think that it would be impossible for something like that to stay quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always kind of interesting, I guess, going off a tangent on that is how much of that stuff could be secret. Because I think you see the kooky people who, like, they'll write books and things and say, hey, I worked for NASA in the 60s and the moon landing was faked. And they provide all this weird proof, like Roswell, like, yeah, this stuff actually happened. And you just wonder if
seems more believable, at least for me, it seems more believable that stuff could happen then.
Just because of how quick information is to get out now.
Right. And not only that, but I don't know, people seemed a bit different then. It seemed, it seemed a bit unseemly to speak out or, go again. There was almost a societal pressure to, keep those things quiet.
Yeah, but I wonder if those people like would still exist today, and those would be the ones who would be in those rooms. Because I would think they're probably getting a lot of money if they're doing those things. Be like, hey, your life's going to be nice. You just can't say anything to anybody. Because I think that would be a lot of the push now is to be like, hey, I'm gonna spill this story because I can get a book deal out of it. And I can make a ton of money. But if the government's already taking care of those people's in those high, confidential type environments, then maybe there's still that not that big urge to spill those secrets.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I would think, honestly, I think in this day and age, I think it would be nigh impossible to keep those things under wraps. I mean, look at, there was a movie, that came out a while ago called Enemy of the State with Will Smith and Gene Hackman. And they were talking in that movie. You see, it's about like the NSA and how they can easily, track phone calls and hack people's, email and phones and, wires and bugs and wiretaps and everything else. And people look at that and they're like, that's fucking crazy.
But that was like 10, 15 years ago that movie came out. Do you do you have an idea of like if that was probably 15 years late when that was made? Like they're probably doing that stuff like in the early 90s, maybe even the 80s. Like it's with the capability of, the government and stuff, if with that kind of stuff nowadays is probably just ridiculous. Like if you were that person,
it is ridiculous. I mean, they hack, they can hack phones, computers. They can just, I mean, even in that movie, they were like, now with cell phone technology, people just snatch, you can just snatch calls out of the air.
Yeah.
Calls and messages and texts and emails and, all that stuff. And like I said, that movie was made, 10, 15 years ago, but it was true. The whole thing was true.
Yeah.
I mean, not the actual movie, but I'm saying that the capabilities that the NSA had, and people were like, that's fucking crazy. Like, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't actually, spy on American people. But they did.
crazy tinfoil on the head guy saying that. That's not
Right.
possible.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, that project eventually came to light.
Hmm. Well, I just wonder too, like without those capabilities, if it would even be possible for somebody to spill the beans on stuff like that. Because I mean, like in the early '60s and stuff like that stuff was probably difficult to get out because, like, let's say the moon landing was faked, and Richard worked for NASA at this point. He's like, you know what, I gotta spill the beans on this. I don't feel good about lying to the public. By the time you made all the connections to get that out there, you'd probably be dead if it was that high of a priority to keep secret.
Yeah, but see, now I don't think that's the case. Now we live in an age of instantaneous information where things can be, uploaded and posted and in mere seconds.
But is that the secret that they control all that? So when you try to push that stuff out there, they're going to know before it even hits the wire.
Oh yeah, because everything on the internet, like when you delete photos off the internet, they're totally gone. Wait a minute.
Let me search for that naked spring break picture that you posted last week that I deleted.
Yes. At the Copacabana.
But yeah, space travel should be cool.
I'm all about some space travel.
So what else has been new? So we're going to talk about space travel. We got about 15, 20 minutes left. Is there anything else to finish up on?
No. I mean, no. That was space travel was my big thing. I started replaying StarCraft 2, which if anybody has not, messed around with that, I'm a fan of I'm a nostalgia fan. So, I mean, StarCraft 2, it came out, only a few years ago, but I'm playing the very first one. I mean, like it's called StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty. Like I haven't even gotten any of the expansions or anything for it.
Is that the one that's like Civilization, where you build your thing on a planet and?
Yeah, you build like you have buildings that you build and they train troops and then you go and attack other. It's actually in Korea it's considered a sport.
Isn't that the big thing? Is like you never play online because you always lose because you're playing some 12-year-old Korean.
Yeah. Stay away from the Korean servers. Don't get on those. They have people that sit in a house, like the groups of them that'll sit in a house and spend the entire day, 8-10 hours a day playing this game. Because in Korea, like I said, it's a sport. They televise matches, and I mean, you can go on YouTube and you can look up, pro StarCraft 2, and you see tons of games where I am nowhere near that good.
It's funny you bring that up. I don't think we've ever talked about this. Where video game play like that is starting to become more mainstream. So, have you heard of like League of Legends, or I believe it's called Dota?
I have a friend of mine that's really into League of Legends.
So these are competition style games. You build these teams, and they're like 45-minute matches. These things are so good that they're giving out work visas here in the States for people to come over, and that's what they do. They just play this game all day.
Right. And I mean, there's tournament prizes, for, 20, 40, $50,000.
I thought the national championship one was like in the millions.
It might be.
But that's just, I mean, some guys got together, developed this, cool idea for a game, and it just branches out. I mean, it's okay. This is going to be an interesting topic. So it's just like with like baseball and other sports. Some guys get together, put some rules together for this, interesting game, and before you know it, it takes off, and they're these billion-dollar industries. Are we going to see that quicker turnaround now because of video games?
I mean, I'd like to think so. I mean, honestly, like to me, I think if we're gonna classify NASCAR as a sport, then I think we should classify, certain video games as a sport. I mean, StarCraft 2 could totally be a sport. It requires, tons of strategy, immense hand-eye coordination. You have to think super, super quick. You have to have, in some cases, like a thought-out plan. I mean, it's something that if you practice it a lot, you get a lot better at, just like any other sport. If you practice hitting a baseball, 10,000 times, you're better at than you were 10,000 times ago. If you play a game of StarCraft 2 10,000 times, you're way better than you were 10,000 times ago.
Well, I don't know if you heard, like you were saying, they consider it a sport. I believe League of Legends, the championships or some of the national finals, they played those. That was shown on ESPN3, which is their online thing.
Uh huh.
So it's very much getting to that point. I mean, poker's kind of fallen out, but you get games like these that come in that stick around for years. That could be a staple on ESPN or NBC. You could be seeing the National League of Legends championships.
I mean, there was a good chunk of time where I actually really liked watching StarCraft 2 matches. Like, I would just watch videos of it on YouTube, and they'd be, 45-minute, hour-long videos of somebody doing a commentary of a match. And
That's interesting to think. I mean, I haven't really thought about that until now, but at some point, like it's starting out small, which I'm sure all sports has started out as, or any kind of entertainment. That there's a small niche for it. There's a certain group of people who love watching it, and it just kind of branches out into like the masses that like, oh, I played that in high school, but I wasn't good enough to make it to the pros. Like, are we gonna see League of Legends, Dota, high school teams playing for like state championships? Like, is that the future?
I'd be totally cool with that. I mean, why not?
I don't. Yeah.
Why not?
So like, yeah, like your son is like, okay, I wanna join the League of Legends team at school. Is that any different than him saying, hey, I want to join the baseball team?
I think honestly, is there an actual difference? Not really. Is there a difference in the eyes of the parents? Probably.
I mean, the only big difference I can see is one's a little bit more physically active than the other, but I mean, I would think that you would probably want your kids to. I mean, if you're going to do something like that, I mean, it takes a lot of endurance and stamina. So, like, I think you would have them like do some physical activities to be in a decent shape enough to sit down and play these games for hours at a time.
Exactly.
Oh, that's crazy to think about. Is that going to be? Could you see that happening in the next 10 years?
What was that one movie? It was a super old movie, and it was about this kid that played video games with like all these other kids for a tournament. And at the end, like it was him and this other kid, and they had a chance to play Super Mario Brothers 3.
Was that a documentary, or was that
No,
just a movie?
it was a movie. I think you're thinking of there was a documentary called The King of Kong.
Yeah, I remember that
Really,
one. Yeah, it's really
really
good.
good documentary about about these guys that are looking to attain the Guinness World Record for the all-time high score on Donkey Kong.
But and I mean, I think this. I mean, if something like games like these were built back then, it probably would be in the stream of where you're seeing, actual teams or maybe rec teams that go out and they play these. But Donkey Kong was a single player, so you really didn't have a team mentality. It was just me by myself playing.
Right.
But these games like League of Legends and Dota, you're playing with teams, and that sparks competition, which sparks money, which sparks teams, sponsors, TV deals, on and on and on. And before you know it, you've got people in the States with work visas playing a game.
Right. And I mean, it's one thing it's one thing to say, how would you feel if you had the talent to be a professional athlete? I mean, like, if you could be on, say, the Chicago Bears, that'd be awesome.
Oh
But
yeah.
but I mean, like, to say like, what if you had the chance to be a professional? What do you do for a living? I play StarCraft 2 competitively.
But yeah, I think right now, and like if you tell that to my parents, they'd be like, "Oh my god, this dude's a loser." If
Right.
you followed up with like I make $700,000 a year from sponsors and championship money, they'd be like, oh shit, there's a lot of money in that. This guy's kind of important. It's all based
Right.
on money because back in the day when you were playing professional baseball, it was just kind of like, oh, your job's a baseball player because they didn't make any money. Now, since they're basically celebrities, you say, well, what do you do? It's like, well, I'm a professional baseball player. Like, oh wow, well, you must make a lot of money.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah, and it goes both ways though with baseball though, because when you first, I read a book. It was about a guy who played minor league baseball, and he hated telling people that because their first assumption was that he was a millionaire, but he was a minor league player, and they'd be like, "Oh, well, what do you do?" He's like, "Well, I'm a baseball player." Like, "Oh, wow, you must make a lot of money," and like he was making like below minimum wage when he added everything up because minor league players make absolutely no money until they break into the big leagues.
Uh,
It's a really good book. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but
that sounds depressing.
it really is. Like they talk about, so they have like in these towns because they play in pretty small towns. The minor league teams do. They're towns of maybe 10,000 people, 20,000 people.
Right.
Have to travel by bus. And he talks about like in these towns they'll have like these like meet and greets, or like they bring the players and the mascots to like school events. I think you got like maybe $100 or $200 per event. And he said every time that list was posted, like within minutes it would be filled up because these guys had no money and needed to do this just to survive.
Right. God, that is depressing.
It seems like it sucks, and this guy ends up finally making it to the big leagues. He has another book where he talks about how awkward it was in the big leagues, because right away he goes from making nothing to once he gets promoted into the big leagues, he's making like $500,000 a year. Like that's the minimum.
Yeah.
So he gets into the big leagues and he's sitting there with a guy who's been in the big leagues for a little bit. He's like, you do realize how tough it is in the minor leagues for a lot of these guys, right? He's like, yeah. He's like, but I think it should be that way because it fuels the hunger, to get to the big leagues. He's like, you do realize like you have absolutely no money in the minor leagues. He's like, yeah, but whatever. Because I mean, he's
doesn't
finally
bother me now.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, I make the money now, and I had to go through that struggle, so why shouldn't they?
Ouch.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, to like especially. Well, I mean I don't know, and that's is that kind of the thing? Is that like people that have success, like, do we as a society demand that they struggle and like should we force people to suffer in order to attain levels of success?
I don't know. I mean, I think a little bit. The way it sounds like with that scenario, it's a little shitty. I think at some point, if you've been playing like minor league baseball for 5 or 10 years, you should be making a livable wage.
I agree. I mean, like it's kind of like like you hear about like people in the starving actor or actress, like they're working like a dead end job trying to make ends meet while simultaneously trying to have some sort of a career in acting or whatever. Like, I don't know, do we demand that everybody has to go through this trial by fire before they're successful? And is that fair?
It just depends, because I'm kind of on the fence about it, because like if you say, like in that scenario, he finally made it to the big leagues and he was fine, but there's guys who devote their life to it and end up being 35 and have absolutely nothing to show for it, and that really sucks.
Yeah.
But another part of me is like, well, if some dude just sucks and is just there because he's making a very livable wage, is that fair to everybody else who's actually trying to make it like professionally? Like, if you're an actor, it's like, okay, well, the minimum an actor can get per year is, let's say $60,000, very livable. And so the person goes and does like 2 or 3 commercials to make that money.
Right.
It's the guidelines that, I mean, I guess making it big is kind of the struggle to get that kind of money, whereas you can't like just be a lame ass and, give a half-ass effort just to make money. If that makes sense, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of a ramble.
I mean, yeah, I see what you're saying, but I mean, I don't know. I've always been kind of a firm believer that like the cream rises to the top. It's kind of like how I feel about like music on the internet. Like if you're good, like if you put out music on, if you're a musician and you put your music out on the internet, if it's good, like if it's really good, then it gets found. It gets found. It gets shared. It gets passed on. It gets discovered. Like one thing I've always loved about something like the internet is that the good things work their way up.
Yeah.
Just naturally.
I think the problem with that kind of stuff, though, like music or anything, is that there's so much of it out there that shuffling through the crap can make it hard for the cream to rise. Like there's too much gunk blocking the cream from rising.
I agree. I but to me, I think things, I mean, from what I've noticed, it seems like things that are truly good eventually work their way there. It might take longer. It may take longer than it should, but it seems like it happens almost spontaneously in a way. Like someone, like let's say you're really good at guitar, and let's say you're in a really good band, and you're really good band, records some music and puts it on the internet, and someone listens to it and loves it, and then passes it on, and it just gets passed, and those people like it, and they talk about it, and you just like I said, like it almost happens spontaneously, and it seems like that happens time and time again, and I find that inspiring.
Yeah, I mean the internet really has afforded that opportunity. But for the good and the bad, it's for all the issues it causes, it does have a lot of benefits because you have these people who can create bands or like video games like Dota and League of Legends. Those are very online centric, so the internet has provided that ability. And League of Legends is a really great game for people who enjoy that kind of competition, and it's one of the best games out there for that. And so, at least that's what people say. And so it's found a niche and people play it, and now it's all the way on ESPN for its national championships.
Yeah, now it's on ESPN, which I mean, to me, I think would seem extremely surreal. Like if you were a kid that just like sat in his house and played League of Legends all day, and then then just say, "I'm on ESPN," like what? You're on the these are the guys that stuff me into lockers.
Well, I was gonna say something about like you said, like you want to be a professional athlete, and like you and I can't we can't be like, you know what, you and I are both gonna play professional football. Let's start working out. We're gonna play professional football.
I kind of know what I kind of think I know what you're getting at. You're getting at like when it comes to things like professional, football or baseball or something, that there's a degree of genetics involved.
Yeah, and I'm sure
Like
there's still
you have to be like a big guy to play professional football. Like you have to be, and it's not all just time in the gym. I mean, some of it is just, some people just have a natural propensity to do it and be good at it.
There's no amount of lifting or working out or supplements that can get me to be 6'7" or 6'6" and 300 pounds and just solid muscle. It's just not possible.
Right. But I think the point you're making, I mean, I don't know, but I think the point you're making is that when it comes to something like League of Legends or StarCraft 2, that's almost something that anybody can do if they put enough practice into it.
Yeah, I mean, and like they have that online setup to where you just kind of jump into different rooms and play. And as you build up, like you can essentially play professionals, right then.
Yeah, from your own living room.
Yeah, there's guys I know who I think they've been in a couple of matches with actual professionals, and there's no way I'm going to play a pickup game of basketball with an actual basketball player. Maybe accidentally, and if that ever happens, that's a once in a lifetime. But he's played.
Oh, I ran to Karl Malone while I was playing a pickup game.
The ball rolled over and he kicked it up. And he's like, "You got room for one more?" Sure, Carl. So I think that's what we're going to do when that spaceship's about to take off. We'll walk in there and be like, "Hey, you guys got room for 2 more?"
Yeah.
Bring it around.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. We got any closing thoughts before I do a little housekeeping?
There are things in this world that inspire us as a human race. One of them is going to space, and another one is being a space marine destroying hordes of alien insects.
I feel like this is like the Jerry Springer closing moment. That's what we have for you on this.
Right.
All right. Well, I'll do a little housekeeping. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at Language of Bro. Feel free to email us at languageofbromance@gmail.com. Our website is languageofbromance.com. Like us on Facebook and leave a comment and subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher.
And also be sure to check us out on our new home. Well, it's not a new-ish home, and that is the Pod Bros Network.
Pod Bros Network. We actually did a guest spot on the Guy Huddle, episode 15, I believe. So if you're interested, give it, check it out. We talk about kind of where we came from and everything, and talk about the Star Wars trailer.
Yes, with a fucking lightsaber.
All right. I hope that's not going to be any copyright issues by doing that. We might have to edit that part out.
Yeah.
Lucas.
Yeah, you do.
Lucas and Disney will be after us.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than getting chased by Mickey Mouse.
That would be good press, though.
Yeah.
And a good episode. Probably the best episode ever. Like, Richard, you know what fucking happened today? I walked out my door and fucking Mickey was standing there with a lightsaber.
Hey, motherfucker!
You mean like a fake lightsaber? It's like, no, it was actual functioning. He cut the shit out of stuff.
Where'd you been breaking some copyright laws?
All right. Well, anything else before we close her out?
No.
All right. Well, that's all the bromance we have for this show. I'm Shawn.
And I'm Richard.
And I say we eat the beaver.